Welcome back, guys, to Phoenix Wright, Trials and Tribulations, where Phoenix is still fighting for his life, with Dahlia Hawthorne now on the stand. However, of course, Dahlia's MO seems to be to use some extremely protective statements of Phoenix, but there's a connection between Mia and Dahlia to begin with. Quite interesting as we dig inside, because we need to press this statement a bit more, don't we? And find the contradiction within it. So let's skip forward past the first bit and skip to our little contradiction showing. Now, how are we going to do it? What are we going to have to present? That's the interesting part. Feeble lies are not very becoming, Miss Hawthorne, so let's drop them, shall we? What? I would never.
Objection! Miss Fay, I will not allow you to badger this witness. I believe the defense is engaged in a fishing expedition. That is, she has no supporting... Please don't glare at me like that. I am just doing my job.
Now then, Miss Hawthorne. The defendant's palm print was found on Mr. Swallow's leather jacket. It has already been shown that Mr. Wright did in fact push the victim. What? There's no need to try to cover for the defendant. It would be much better if you came out and told us the whole truth.
There's nothing to worry about, young lady. Just tell us everything that you saw.
Yes, Your Honor. I will. If you don't mind, I'd like to revise my testimony. Looks like we're finally getting somewhere. Actually, I didn't see the moment he pushed Dougie. So first you say he didn't, then you say he did.
Hold it!
You didn't see it? Well, I saw the moment when Dougie fell to the ground.
And at that time, there was only the two of them at the scene. The defendant, Phoenix Wright, and the victim, Doug Swallow.
Yes, that's right. It didn't look like they were fighting, and I didn't hear anything unusual either.
Hold it!
So then, what did it look like they were doing to you? I thought they were having a nice, friendly afternoon conversation. Oh, give me a break. That's why I really wasn't watching them all that closely.
Did you notice anything out of the ordinary at all?
No, nothing at all, Mr. Judge.
Oh, I like the sound of that, Mr. Judge. Now then, please proceed with your testimony.
So it's that one we're after. We create two more statements, and one of which said, didn't hear or see anything. So the breaking sound from Phoenix's testimony? There was a loud sound when this happened. It is the umbrella.
Objection!
You say you didn't hear anything unusual. Is that correct? Yes, that's why I was very relaxed, looking at the scenery around me. That's nice, but I find that just a little odd. I have here the testimony of your boyfriend, Mr. Phoenix Wright. And he clearly testified to the effect that when he pushed the victim, he heard a sharp, loud noise. He said that? If you were really that close to the two of them, why didn't you hear this noise as well?
Objection! Well, maybe the noise just was not that memorable. Objection!
But according to Mr. Wright's testimony, it was a sharp noise like a snap. There's no way a noise like that could fail to make an impression.
Knack!
Like that. May I have a moment to answer?
By all means.
I know the reason why I didn't hear the noise. You see, the truth is, I had my headphones on and I was listening to music at the same time.
Headphones? You mean that both of your ears were covered?
The rain was just beginning to let up. It seemed as though 4 wasn't ready for his fun to come to an end yet. So the sky continued to flash and rumble. Thunder and lightning, huh? Yes, I'm afraid of the sound of thunder, so I put my headphones on to block it out.
Well, Your Honor, as you can see, there weren't any contradictions in her testimony after all.
Wait a sec, Mia. That testimony just now. She said something that could totally change this whole case. That there was lightning We're talking about an electrocution victim.
Your Honor, there is a problem with the witness's testimony.
What do you mean?
Didn't you notice? She said there was lightning, correct?
Yes, what about it?
Well, lightning is actually a large discharge of electricity in the atmosphere. Am I right?
Now's not the time for a science lesson, Miss Fay, with you.
With you, Judge. Everything is needed.
Yes, Your Honor. Anyway, since the cause of death was electrocution, isn't it possible that the victim died from being hit by a bolt of lightning?
I must admit that the thought had not occurred to me.
Just what kind of thoughts do occur to this guy anyway?
It makes me wonder.
This entire case is built on the premise that Mr. Doug Swallow was murdered. That very premise itself is mistaken. The defense believes that Mr. Swallow was, in fact, the victim of a stray bolt.
It appears the defense may be onto something.
And I think the defense was onto something as well. The thoughts that go through this judge's head. Do you think he's the reason there's music in the background when it plays? He's not really listening. He's just going, blah, 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 blah. It's just there, and that's the background BGM music. It's not like there's much else going on in his up there, really, to be honest.
It appears the defense may be onto something. Could it be that the death was actually accidental?
Alright, you did it! Mia! I'll be taking that not guilty now if you don't...
I've heard that you have such a low opinion of me, Miss Fay.
Huh?
I'm not a fool, you know. The prosecution has done its research, Your Honor. We found that there were no lightning strikes on that day at that location.
What?
What's more, we have evidence that the electrical cable is definitely linked to this case.
Evidence, Mr. Payne. Well, what is this evidence?
This affidavit.
And who is this affidavit from?
The pharmacology students who were conducting experiments in their labs that day.
Allow me to read out to the court the testimony of the pharmacology students.
All equipment in the labs lost power all of a sudden at around 3 p.m. that day.
Was it a blackout?
All of the lab's equipment runs on high voltage, Your Honor.
So you're saying the equipment lost power because...
Precisely. They lost power because of the severed electrical cable. The power outage occurred at approximately 3 p.m.
Which fits with the time of death listed in the autopsy report. Or lifted from.
Exactly. In other words, the victim died as a result of touching the severed electrical cable. According to the students, the cables were very old. They were planning on having them replaced in the near future.
I see.
Apparently the cables had become so brittle that even the smallest bump would have caused them to break.
However, there's one thing that troubles me. If the cable could have been broken by any small bump, then it wouldn't have snapped if it hadn't been bumped into, correct?
Well, I suppose you could say that.
Miss Fay, do you have any thoughts regarding the cause of the severed cable?
Your Honor, I don't like how this is looking one bit. I have to come up with something to try to regain some momentum. If it pleases the court, the defense would like to state its opinion.
Well then, let's hear it. Who or what was it that caused the cable to break?
Oh. You have to choose something to bump straight into that, really. At 2:55 p.m, eh? It was the pharmacology students using the electricity too much. Who or what is probably the clue that I'm probably looking at a person here. But the problem is, he's the only one who interacted directly with it, so if I say someone else did, like you, I don't think we're looking at a win right now. Oh wow, this is a problematic choice. The only person it could have been was Phoenix. But isn't that putting him in the, It doesn't say he pushed him into the cable though, does it? Because the umbrella's miles away from the cable. Maybe we can use that.
Your Honor, please think back to Mr. Wright's testimony, because the snap.
The defendant's testimony?
He said that after he pushed the victim, he heard a loud, sharp noise. Now, this happened at around 3 p.m., correct?
Yes, that sounds right. Wait, are you saying that...
Our lab equipment lost power at 2:55 p.m., which fits right in Mr. Wright's timeline. In other words, it was Mr. Wright's shove that caused the power outage.
Yes, the prosecution also came to that same conclusion.
Yes, but you see, the thing with this is, and where we're going, is along the lines of the fact that he's at one pole, the umbrella's at another pole, which means we know the body was moved. So if we pushed him into that pole, then we'd have caused that to go down on him, but he definitely was pushed over there. So we're trying to entrap the... I'm really confused now as well now. I really wish I didn't try to explain this. It's made it worse. Phoenix Wright logic, we will follow you.
Yes, the prosecution also came to that same conclusion. And it was that very shove that caused Mr. Swallow to be electrocuted. Objection!
I'm afraid I can't agree with you there, Mr. Payne.
What's that supposed to mean?
Take a good look at where the victim landed after being shoved. See the umbrella? It's by the electrical pole. That's right. The victim banged into that pole as a result of being pushed. It was that impact that caused the cable to break.
Well, that makes sense. And then the victim was electrocuted.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but no. It doesn't make sense at all.
The positioning.
If the victim was shoved into the far pole, then he couldn't have been electrocuted by this severed cable in the foreground here.
Essentially, I only chose Phoenix because he's probably the only one I could pick. But it's more or less the lines of saying that, yes, the defendant did cause it, but if he did cause it and we follow the line of the rest of the evidence, if you know what I mean, then that positioning is completely false and wrong. The main point, of course, is to push the chest would have been unlikely to yield a victim lying on the front, but you never know what could happen afterwards. Indeed.
And he couldn't have been electrocuted by this severed cable in the foreground here.
Nah!
Indeed.
In other words, someone other than my client must have electrocuted the victim.
Order! Order in the court!
Ah, the lamentations of my enemy. How I've longed to hear them.
It's true! The defense is absolutely correct. There doesn't seem to be any way the defendant could have done it.
Mr. Judge, sir, may I say something? The Madame Attorney's explanation. She said some things that are a little different than I remember them.
Well,
what the? Please, just once more. May I please testify one last time? Please, Mr. Judge?
Of course it's alright. Just go right ahead and give your new testimony.
This is it. She's finally starting to show her true colours. The truth is, Feeny pushed him twice.
Really?
The first time was into the electrical pole. That's when the cable broke. Then Dougie tried his best to run away from him. But Feeny caught up and crashed into him from behind. The cable snapping and Dougie being electrocuted, it all occurred in less than a minute.
I don't need to press this one.
So after being shoved, the victim got up and tried to run away.
and that is when the defendant pushed him for the second time.
I'm so sorry, Feeny, but I just have to tell the truth. Am I doing the right thing? Am I, Mr. Judge?
Of course you are, my dear. As painful as it may seem, you are. Now then, Mrs. Fay. Mrs., she's got married. You may proceed with your cross-examination.
Or she's duplicated, so it's MISS, yes. That could be true too.
The truth is, Feeny pushed him twice.
Now, we got no corroborating kind of like evidence to support that, but it seems like you've picked up the evidence and chosen handprint from the front, nothing from the back, because you even say he crashed into him from the back. So this is an interesting statement in itself.
Miss Hawthorne, previously in your testimony you said the following. Actually, I didn't see the moment he pushed Dougie. I know, I'm sorry, I wanted to protect Feeny.
So that's why you basically lied to the court?
I was a bad girl, I know. Mr. Judge,
Yes.
would you please forgive little old me? Of course he won't. What you did is called perjury.
Oh, come on now. It was just a little old white lie. We'll forget it this time, but please be more careful from now on, alright?
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Judge.
Not at all. Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas.
The judge had better be more careful himself. A dark alley is friendlier than that girl.
The first time was into the electrical pole. That's when the cable broke.
So that's what we've established anyway. So we're not really going to get much further with that.
And Dougie tried his best to run away from him.
Which sounds weird, because, you know, landed on the umbrella, got up, then tried to run away? Probably wouldn't have needed to run away if Phoenix wanted to go and chase him, as being said here.
Caught up and crashed into him from behind.
Because people run towards downed electric wires anyway. Not just one, but two people? No.
The cable snapping and Dougie being electrocuted. It all occurred in less than a minute.
Now this is the interesting statement, isn't it?
Did you actually witness the moment the victim was electrocuted? I'm sorry. I didn't actually see it. I turned my eyes away.
That's understandable.
Yes, indeed. It would have been a horrific sight for anyone to behold.
I don't figure out the contradiction here. No, it's that. It's all over.
She didn't have much time to come up with a lie, so this is my best chance. There must be a hole in her testimony somewhere. Think, Mia.
It's times. I know what it is already. Right. So we're presenting to this. So we're presenting... So this says it stopped at 3 o'clock. Actually, it looks like past 3 o'clock. Time of death is 3 p.m. And then we've got the Phoenix testimony. No, it's not. It's this testimony, student's testimony, which says 2:55. So technically, the watch would have stopped at the time that actually happened. So there was time between. It did not take less than a minute. So it's got to be the student's testimony.
Objection!
The time frame does not match up.
That's enough, witness. I'm afraid I don't understand. You will in a minute. Could you please take a look at this picture? Oh, that medicine. That's the one Feeny likes to take for his colds. It's not the medicine I want you to look at. It's the wristwatch. It stops at the precise time the victim was electrocuted. In other words, 3:05 p.m.
Yes, and your point is, Miss Fay?
My point is this. What time was it when the lab suffered that power outage due to the cable snapping?
Well, according to the student's testimony, the answer is clear. It was 2:55 p.m. Yeah!
Would you care to explain to the court, Miss Dahlia Hawthorne, what exactly happened during this 10-minute interval? The defense proposes that it was during this interval the real murderer killed Mr. Doug Swallow.
Order in the court.
This is nonsense. The real murderer?
Objection!
Even you can't deny that the time between the cable breaking and the electrocution are completely unaccounted for.
Then who was it? Who else are you saying could have done it?
There's only one person who could have murdered Mr. Swallow. Only after my client had left the scene was there a window of opportunity for the real killer.
Miss Fay, is the defense ready to indict someone as this real killer?
It's finally time. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Yes, Your Honor. We are ready.
Very well, but remember, if you accuse the wrong person, you will be penalized. Think very carefully before you speak, Miss Fay. Now then, Miss Fay, let's have it. Who is this real killer?
The only other person at the scene, of course.
Take that!
It could only have been you, Dahlia Hawthorne. What? How? How can you...
The defense is grasping at straws.
10 minutes passed between the time the cable broke and the time of electrocution. What exactly were you doing that whole time, Miss Hawthorne? Were you really listening to the music while cheering them both on as they fought? We'll find out next episode, of course, on Phoenix Wright, Trials and Tribulations, as we've now pointed the finger. It's time to get that slam dunk and a conviction of the rightful murderer, if you can call it that sentence. Bye-bye.